Hi, it's G and Yanka from Amazing Parenting and the Practical Parenting Podcast. And we're really excited today to be online and bringing you an interview with our internet friend, Stephen. So, Stephen, where are you right now?
Right now, I'm in Kharkov, Ukraine. People might not know much about Kharkov, but it's the second largest city in Ukraine. Many more people know Kiev, but Kharkov is on the eastern part of the country, not very far from the Russian border.
Okay, fantastic. And we already covered the weather in the pre-interview, so we're not going to talk about it now. So we're here to talk about parenting and parenting experiences today. So the first important question is: are you a parent?
Yes, I'm a parent. I have two lovely little children, one boy who's
Hmm.
6 years old and my girl who's 5 years old.
Okay, super cool. And can you tell us a little bit about how you spend your time with your children?
Well, I guess the reason why we're having this interview is probably because I homeschool, so my kids are not enrolled in any formal school. And
Hmm.
fortunately, I work from my home also, so I work through the internet. So that means I'm able to spend a lot of time with them. And so we spend our time doing many learning activities and many, let's say, extracurricular activities and also many athletic activities. So my we do a lot of, like, for example, mathematics. Mathematics is probably one of our biggest activities. We're enrolled in a separate class that helps kids do mathematics really quickly. As
Hmm.
well, my son is in chess. He has chess 3 times a week. My daughter is in dance. She has dance twice a week. And we have an art teacher who comes over 2 to 3 times a week, and they do lots of art. And also have a woman who comes over and helps me with speaking Ukrainian and Russian. They speak Russian fluently, but in this part of the country, not everybody speaks Ukrainian on a daily basis. So they learn Ukrainian as well, which is quite close to Russian, but it's still another language.
Wow, that's a huge scope of information. Mathematics, art, sports, dance,
Mm,
languages. That's a huge responsibility for a parent to take on.
yeah.
So how do you manage to do that?
Well, I think that the key thing is through great relationships with people. The people who, for example, I mentioned that there's an art teacher who comes over and she's been helping me do this art for now literally over 3 years. And I actually didn't even mention it. We have piano lessons also.
Oh,
So
wow.
piano lessons also. The person who's been teaching them the piano has also been with me for like 3 years. So
Hmm.
teaching my son basically when he was like 3 years old, and my daughter was 2.5, just banging on the piano a little bit. And so some of the things have been formal classes, like the mathematics, for example, it's been a formal class, but I have emphasized mathematics from the start. So that's been probably my own project before the formal class. But now in the formal class, it's a formal class with a formal curriculum, as well as the chess is a formal, like, chess school. Uh, Not like all day, but as I said, 3 times a week. So I think it's just finding people that you're really comfortable with and can trust to help out in the process. I mean, I do a lot myself, but I don't do absolutely everything, particularly like art. I'm not the greatest artist, and I don't necessarily have the patience to teach them art, especially given that I don't even know art so well. So it's great to have somebody who I can completely trust, who's very nurturing, who loves them very much. As I said, it's been 3 years, so she's like been with them since they're like actually little babies, and it's really quite a great relationship.
How would you compare what you do to to how other parents parent. This is from the
Oh,
perspective of doing homeschooling, taking on a
yeah,
massive
yeah, yeah.
responsibility with your children there.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest difference between my parenting perspective and other parenting perspectives, or at least parenting, I would say, routines that I see, is I think that most parents generally view childhood as this kind of magical time, or at least childhood before school, as this magical time where they just play and
Mm.
they just play and they don't do much else other than play. But like they don't really try to do much learning activities because learning is for school. So it's like you play, and then when education comes, then you kind of ship your kids off to maybe kindergarten or
Mhm.
school. So it's like, what do we do? Basically, parents assume full responsibility for teaching them how to speak. So they speak, they speak, they speak, they speak, they speak. Mama's in the stroller talking to the babies, blah, 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 blah. They're talking, so they assume 100% responsibility for teaching them how to speak, but almost nothing else. So it's like, I'll teach you how to speak, then you play, and then education, other than language, really takes place in school. So my approach is much different, because my approach has been that from the time children are born, they're learning. They're learning immediately. Their brains are in the most fertile period of development from 0 to 6 years old. And so that's why they're learning languages. That's why they're able to learn languages so quickly, but they can learn actually much more. So it's a time when very much their educational capacity is significantly shaped. Their A lot of their childhood experience, their brain is in the process of developing. So how that develops, I think, is very important. So that's why from the start I've given them a lot of stimulus, exposed them to a lot of different things, thinking that this may help and shape their personality at a time when their brain is in the biggest period of development. And I don't think that, for example, from the point of 6 years and older, that the educational responsibility rests with the schools. So I think that I, as a parent, assume much greater responsibility for my kids' education than I'm willing to just delegate full throttle. So I can put them in schools, or like classes or things like that, delegating portions of the responsibility, but the overall responsibility for my kids' education is myself.
I would like to ask, what's your overall approach to homeschooling? Because there are different approaches. There's the unschooling that goes all with the enjoyment of the kids, whatever they
Yeah,
enjoy.
yeah, yeah,
And do
yeah.
you do you like have some kind of work or drills that the kids don't enjoy
Yeah,
but
I
have to
do.
do? Or
Well, I think that the reality is that, as I just explained, my approach has been on this notion of how the brain develops, and so this developmental potential. So as a result, I've done things with them before they knew how to speak. I did like educational kind of things before they knew how to speak. So flashcards when they were like maybe months old. Talking to them about, maybe I have like 600, 700 different flashcards, and saying, well, this is a cow, this is a pig, this is a, and talking to them like that. And at the same time, then I would put them down and I would say, okay, before they could speak, okay, can you give me the pig? And then they would give me the card that's the pig. Can you show me the cow? And they would give me the card. So that was even pre-language. So we've always done these kind of educational kind of things. So they don't really know that there's something abnormal about it. So
okay.
we've always done academic kind of things. And so when people say, well, maybe they don't really like it, they don't really know not to like it because they think that it's completely normal.
Hmm.
Maybe kids don't like to brush their teeth at a certain point, but then they realize they have to brush their teeth. They stop complaining about it because they know they have to brush their teeth.
Hmm.
And so it's that kind of thing. So I don't encounter that kind of resistance to saying, okay, like for example, what we do now, which maybe people would find this a little bit strange or maybe far advanced, is every day, for example, both my son and daughter, I pick a part of a children's encyclopedia and then they copy it. They copy the portion on a piece of paper. So that way they really understand what they're reading, they're practicing writing, and then they tell me exactly, I pick what you're going to copy, and then they tell me what they've learned in that thing. So, talking about breathing, or talking about the brain, or talking about digestive system, something like that. And so um, maybe a kid who's unschooled or another kid may say, "Oh, that's just so boring." But my kids don't know that it's boring. In fact, my daughter's like, Daddy, when you go to the gym, I wanted to copy something out of the encyclopedia. And she
Okay.
said that last night at like 12 o'clock at night. So I think it just depends on the perspective. I know this. I can't say I've delved into the unschooling process significantly. I have some friends who post things about unschooling, and they're doing fun things. They're going outside, spending time in the mud or doing something. But I don't think that there's any conflict with that versus other things. I think kids should play in the mud. They should be outside. They should do. I think that's a part of, I don't say the schooling experience, but it's certainly got to be part of the educational experience. So I'm less focusing on the school versus unschooling, the whole debate between that, and rather just the education or the life experience of the child, everything in total.
Oh, that's wonderful. Where do you think that this approach, your approach, comes from? Is it something that you've picked up along the way, and is it different from the experiences you had when you grew up with
Yeah,
parents?
it's quite different. I had a completely opposite experience.
Okay.
My experience was that my mother was a teacher. She had gotten 2 master's degrees in child psychology and special education. As I said, she was a teacher herself. And I was put into literally like the most expensive, prestigious school from pre-kindergarten. So like it's a school called like Dalton in New York City, where like many of the children of stars and celebrities and rich people go. So for example, to go into pre-kindergarten, it's about 40,000 US dollars a year from the start. And so but it prides itself as a very progressive school. So a lot of the people go, even in small groups from my very small childhood classes. I ended up going to Yale University. I met many, I didn't go there all the way through, but many of the people in my little first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade classes ended up at Yale University. Out of, let's say, a class of 20 kids, maybe like 5 went to just Yale itself. So, but at the same time, because of my mother's experience, I had to do like double the work. So I would go to school, I would get homework, and then I would come home, and then my mother would give me separate homework. And so I was like very academically driven, and then even like I skipped from first to third grade. So it's like, but it was, but at the same time, I didn't have a great relationship with my mother. I didn't like it. I didn't like her. I didn't like it. I didn't like having to do all the work. But at the same time, I realized there was a benefit because I did kind of skip classes. I was always getting good grades. School was very easy for me. I did go to good schools at the end. So there was a certain advantage there, but I didn't like the process. So I said, when I have kids, I want them to know that you can learn a lot and you can accomplish like maybe amazing things. But the important thing is that it has to be enjoyable, because it doesn't help if you have great educational capacities, but you don't have a good relationship with your mother. It's not a good trade-off. And it's certainly not one that I would want for my kids. I want them to have the best of both worlds. So for me, I inherited this very, very, very strong educational focus. But at the same time, I said, it's really important that first our relationship is really good, and they have fun, and they smile. That we can do things together. So that part of it was missing from my childhood. So that's something that I emphasize. Maybe a triple emphasis in my educational or my parenting relationship with my kids and their educational experience.
Yeah, I think it's really important for parents to put their children in a situation where they can enjoy what is happening rather than force and push their children into certain.
Yeah, so even though, for
areas.
example, I might have listed so many activities, it doesn't feel rushed. It doesn't feel hectic. It doesn't feel like you have this term helicopter parenting, or people, taking them from one place to another, and this amazingly chaotic schedule. It actually doesn't feel very stressful at all. And so for me, that's very important. And a lot of these lessons that I'm talking about literally take place at home. So people are coming to us and just knocking on the door, and then something begins. So it's not like we're commuting from one place to another and stuff like that. So they're even tired going there and coming back. So it's not like that at all.
So the helicopter parenting situation is when the parents are picking their kids up here, dropping them off there, picking their kids up in one place, dropping them
Well,
off somewhere.
also even hovering over everything they do, and also being in kind of constant phone contact, so that the kids. So I think helicopter parenting can be referred to many different things, taking them different places, and also, being in constant phone contact or nearby phone contact, and also just supervising everything they do. So not really allowing the kids to develop an independent sense of self, and also independent problem-solving skills, because the parent is always solving the problems.
Mm-hmm. And as a parent, how does a parent know that the kids are enjoying what is happening? How do the kids know that? How do the parents know that that it's working, right? Because maybe, just as a thought, maybe your mother thought maybe that you were enjoying what you were doing, but
No,
maybe
she
you
didn't
weren't.
think so. I
Okay.
think that people like literally had this experience when um, we have what we call these grandmothers, babushkas, and they sit outside of the door, and we have a dog, and like the dog plays inside the home, and then we go out for walking, and then the dog is really happy to go outside because they like going outside and running around. So I go out with my dog, and my dog is like like just happy, and these babushkas who see me as this foreigner and always kind of imagine the worst are like, oh, the dog is afraid, the dog is afraid. I said, babushkas, my dog is not afraid of me. The dog is barking because he's happy. And the babushka sit there. How do you know? Like, it's my dog. Like, I know we live together. I know my dog is happy, like is barking out of happiness. Like you wouldn't ask some other person, how do you know the emotions of the dog? Like I know the emotion. He's happy. Like you see it. And the same with my kids. Like if I can tell my dog is happy, then I can tell my child is happy. They smile. They do things like they let you know if they're happy. They say they're happy. They say that they're not happy. So, I think that we have a long relationship with dogs. We have even closer relationships to our children. Are you
Yeah.
happy, Sabrina?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I know, I know that look perfectly. We have a daughter who's 5, and when she wakes up in the morning, she sort of has that sort of
Kind of dozed.
yeah. I gotta try to focus on where I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of
So
into that.
I gave a very roundabout answer to say that if you have good communication with your kids, you can tell whether they're happy or not, and if not, they can tell you if they're happy or not.
Yeah, that's great. Let me take a little step back for a
Okay,
second.
go take a pee and eat a banana, okay?
I'm I'm in I'm interested to know why would parents pay so much money to send their children to a special school? You talked about that
Yeah.
people, I don't know, it's like well, maybe well-known people, maybe people who have more resources want to send their kids. So the school obviously provides something different, or should, if they're
Yeah,
spending
certainly it does.
that much money. So what is the difference of that kind of school?
Well, I think that part of it is an exclusionary factor
Okay.
of just being at a certain level where, like for example, like Calvin Klein jeans, right? Calvin, like, his Calvin Klein's daughter, Marcy Klein, was in my class. It's like
Okay.
these people, if you like Revlon perfumes, like this guy, Charles Revlon, the founder of Revlon, his granddaughter is like in my class. Like these people. And so you get these people who I can keep on going and saying names, like Robert Redford's son was like in the grade ahead. Like you can just keep on going. And so part of it is just that when you can just almost pick some price that overwhelming amount of people can't pay, and other people it doesn't matter what the price is. Like, it just doesn't, like, if you said $100,000 a year, those people would be able to pay it. Like, it doesn't really matter. But for other people, they care. Like, they're like, wait a minute. And so part of it is an exclusionary factor. And but it also amounts to like low student teacher ratio,
Mm-hmm.
so that you have maybe 8 students to the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a class of 20 kids, then you have like 3 teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have 3 different groups.
Yeah.
So and then just it just is like where you get the sense, and also even going to people's houses, people would invite me over to their house. You get a sense that there's just like no limit. Like you
Mm-hmm.
go to somebody's house and you go in the elevator, but the whole floor of the building is their house. So you just like one door, and you go, and it's like the whole floor is their house. And sometimes I go to somebody's house, and they would have one person's house, they have a hole cut out in a bar, so they can slide from one floor down to the next floor underneath in an apartment building in New York City. You just get a sense that like there's just no limit.
Oh my
So
God.
it's
Yeah.
just like that you can do whatever and so part of that experience
Mm-hmm.
is that feeling
Mm-hmm.
and a certain level of confidence and entitlement that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
That when you're in this experience, like even me, even though I didn't have that kind of wealth. My parents
Mm-hmm.
didn't have that kind of wealth. But when you're in that experience, you can like even many, many years later, you're not intimidated by anybody. You're just not like the intimidation factor is not there. You're not intimidated by wealth. You're not intimidated by power because you're like, you know, I knew people like you who were idiots when I was 5 years old. Like, you've got all the money in the world, but I remember when you pooped and you didn't flush the toilet. It's like you're just another person. You're just like the
Yeah.
guy. You just have money. So it just is. So there's a certain level of kind of conditioning outside of education that comes with that.
Is it something connected with mindset? This perhaps this idea that you do develop a perspective that maybe there are no limits. Maybe you can do anything because you're
Well,
surrounded by people
it
who.
definitely, it definitely teaches that. I mean, it definitely the acculturation process. I think is for me. It's been very, very important because, like, for example, I lived in like the Bronx in New York, which
Mhm.
is not the most affluent area in New York, and so I would see people who, frankly, were smarter than my people at school. So I had to like lived in the bridge of these 2 different worlds. But as you go on, you see the differences of entitlements, you see the differences of life trajectories,
Mhm.
and you see this kind of like intelligence not translate to success in our larger world. But who
Mhm.
was like smarter? A lot of these kids in the Bronx were just smarter than these other kids. But then you have this academic training, so who knows more biology? Well, by that time, this kid knows a lot more biology. This kid knows a lot more about integration and calculation. I mean, integration and differentiation and calculus and trigonometry. This kid doesn't know much about sines, cosines, and tangents, and this kid does. But that's a kind of level of acculturation that takes place, and so the idea of smartness, intelligence, who can like learn something faster, it doesn't translate into anything from in certain environments.
Mhm.
It just is like, yeah, you can like make jokes about my mother really, really, and make everybody laugh, but it's not going to really get you a job.
Mhm. So how do people around you react to your choices to educate your children yourself and take control of that? Is that positive or negative? What are your experiences?
It's I would say it's more just neutral to skeptical to, it's the bottom line is that I'm here in Kharkov, Ukraine, so most people outside of this place have never heard of this place, and most people in this place uh, kind of just look at me as like a Martian.
Okay. Yeah.
And they see me, and they have their stereotypes about me, whatever. But I, in a sense, challenge all their stereotypes because um, actually, their mother doesn't live with us. So basically, I'm like a single dad. Not a single dad. I mean, have a relationship, but not with their mother,
Mhm.
who's living with us. So um, that alone, a man with 2 kids, is like a big, big, big shocker.
Uh-huh.
And so then, there's this immediate idea that, oh my God, like they must be lacking love. Like they don't have Like there's, where give me a hug, like I'm so sorry you don't have a woman to give you a hug,
It
and
must be so difficult for you.
it's like, yeah, they seem healthy, but where's the love? And
Mhm.
it's kind of like, I love them too, and they're happy. But when it comes to so then immediately it's like, so are they in school? Like, okay, well they don't have a mother, but are they in school? And the answer is
Sorry.
no. It's just like you see this kind of heart drop, like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for these kids, and it's just that, when are they going to school? When are they going to school? And, if I say I don't really know, it's not really a priority at all.
Mhm.
They do a lot. Like, they do quite a bit. We do quite a bit. It's just no interest in really understanding what that means. Just
Mhm.
no interest in asking me the quality of their life experiences, what my values are, what do they actually know. It just never, the conversation never happens. It's just and there's almost this sense that, like, uh, in a sense, like, a lot of people know that school isn't really the answer, but they just want you to join in the club too. Like, it's like, why, what about their social skills, And I say, well, you're not really going to school to play so much, because a lot of times you have to sit there and the teacher says things and you can't touch your friend, you can't talk to your friend. You have to sit there, be quiet, and raise your hand to answer something. So the socializing happens at lunchtime. The socializing happens in between classes. The socializing happens when you're doing a break. So it's not when you're doing the schooling part, it's in between the schooling part. So how about you just do the social part outside of school? So, like, all the time outside with your friends, you can talk and play and touch somebody, and you don't have to say, listen to me. So how about 100% of that energy is directed to socializing? Just be social and play. Make friends, play, do social things, and just focus on that. And when we do school stuff, when we learn to read, we actually spend a lot of time with them, like one to one or one to two, so we can really focus on them reading, or we really focus on what they're doing, so that they actually learn that. So it's not boring, because we're doing it together. So a lot of education happens through relationships. They'll learn whatever I want to teach them. Like, if I want to teach them about mechanics, or I want to teach, but because the thing is that we have a good relationship and they like spending time with me. So what we talk about is not so important as the fact that we're talking, as the fact that we're together. And so that's really, I think, the thing about education. That's why they've learned this languages to begin with. So I'm the only one in this whole nation who speaks English to them as a native speaker. And I'm the only one who speaks English to them pretty much at all. But they speak fluently. And why? Because of our relationship. So if I can learn an entire language, teach an entire language to them, you can certainly teach them little bitty subjects, that are conveyed through that language itself. Learning a language is a big thing.
Yeah, of course, and the language will open doors that other subjects will not. I mean, it opens continents basically. Yeah, because
Yeah,
you learn to, if a child learns to speak Spanish, well, that's the whole of South America open to you.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can go
yeah,
anywhere
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
And also there's a financial difference for languages as well. I was reading that if you're in America and you learn German and speak German, you earn $20,000 to $30,000 more a year just because you have that
Yeah,
language
yeah,
skill.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, language skills are very important. I mean, I'm somebody who's studied many, many languages, so I think the language aspect is incredibly important.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in Slovakia, and we have to juggle a lot of different balls in terms of the legal situation here for our homeschooling. Um, there's a lot of little hoops that we have to jump through, and it varies a lot from country to country. I think from my last reading, I think there's only about 15 or 16 countries in the whole world where you can actually homeschool
Hmm.
without some serious repercussion
Yeah, yeah,
happening.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So does that affect you at all out there?
Yeah, it does a little bit, but not really much at all, because I found this option that's like internet schooling in Ukraine. So
Okay.
it's basically homeschooling, but you're registered with the school,
Mhm.
and you basically they give you a curriculum of things you have to do for per grade, and you just have to do them, and you have to like take pictures and send them in uh, through the internet on the site. We have like maybe a monthly, or actually it was even less than monthly, but meeting through Skype with the teacher, and then they ask, they conduct something in Ukrainian, they conduct a test in English, they talk in Russian, they ask some math questions and things like this, and then they kind of give you a grade. And so they're registered in my son at 6 years old, he's registered in the school. But the bottom line is the curriculum is like so basic that even when we had the interview for the school, my kid was answering all of the questions for the final exam at the end of the first year in the interview. So it's like nothing. So if that's like for me, perfect. They don't have to do anything, but they like, it's like, hello, what's your name? And my kids say, my name is Steve. Tell me something about yourself. And what you do. And so and then the same thing in Russian, the same thing in Ukrainian. I said that we have a Ukrainian, this babushka who comes and helps teach them with Ukrainian. So Ukrainian, they are actually learning, but still the pace, the expectations of the school is so low that it's like nothing. So from the legal perspective, my son is enrolled in a school. So so they have all of the kind of rights and privileges associated with being in school. Practically, it's homeschooling. There's no classes. There's nothing other than, taking some pictures, sending them in, and having some meetings.
Similar situation here.
Did you always know that you wanted to homeschool?
Yes, for a very long time, yes.
Okay. So it wasn't like, oh my God, kids. Because it's
I think it was. I mean, for me, long before I even had kids, I knew what my parenting style was going to be. In fact, that's part of the reason why I even left the United States a long time ago. I left the United States 14 years ago because I figured it was a horrible environment to raise kids. So that was even long before I had my kids, who are, as I said, 5 and 6 years old. And part of it is just the overwhelming level of bureaucracy and kind of nanny state paternalism that has to do with how kids are raised in the United States.
So do you feel that there's a big difference between what would be the classical American education and classical education around, say, this area of Europe where we live, Slovakia, the Ukraine?
Yeah, I just think that in the United States, there's just a huge, in my own experience, as I explained, it shows it's just a huge dichotomy between what education is for people with money and without money. I think the public school system is just, third world disgraceful in the United States for the vast majority of that nation, while you do have some tremendously great but outrageously expensive schools there. I think that, there's issues relating to food and genetically modified food that is significantly worse in the United States than almost any place in the world. I think there's the same situation with vaccination and a medical system that has just gone like a cancer over the entire nation that makes healthy living, particularly for children, nearly impossible. So,
is it true that there's some areas of the United States where when children go to school, they all have to be vaccinated, or what? Does it vary from state to state? Is there one general?
Yeah, it varies from state to state, but the states generally follow the World Health Education recommendations for vaccinations, and in certain states now, for example, California and both New York, there's mandatory vaccinations.
Does this mean without parent consent? I mean,
well, I mean, in New York, they are sometimes giving vaccinations in schools without parents' consent, but in California, it's just required that, you're not able to enter any educational facility for kids without being vaccinated up to the HWO, World Health Organization standards. Maybe not necessarily exactly, but still the level of vaccination in the United States is like way more excessive and oppressive than in any other nation. So, particularly in Europe. So, I mean, I think that, there's a certain level of paternalism and nanny statism in countries in Europe, but in the United States, it's just like way, way worse. It's like the standard by which all of the nanny state measures ensue.
Well, we know that in the United States there's a large financial investment in education. So why is it not working? If there's so many people involved, if there's so many people trained, if there's so much money going
yeah,
into
well, that's part of the reason, right? So many people involved and so many people training, that means that you ought to pay a lot of people. So it's the same thing like with healthcare or something like that. It's like you have these insurance companies. People are a lot of money going around, but the emphasis is not on quality. So, for example, a big part of the reason why education is so messed up on the United States is because it's so driven on this quantitative assessment, quantitative skills, is test taking, teaching to the test is a thing like that. And so the process of education has just been rendered into taking tests in schools that are given, for example, financial incentives to have a certain percentage of the kids pass a certain test, certain financial penalties and sanctions given on certain schools where the percentage fails to meet that standard. And so it's, for example, by contrast, you have a country that I also lived in, Finland, which is almost the exact opposite, where you have the emphasis is not so much on standardized test taking, on these quantitative assessments, but on a broader holistic idea of what education is, and then later test taking, and then the results end up that Finland does a lot better than any European country, and one of the tops in the world, along with like Singapore and China, and South Korea. But it outperforms, but because of its emphasis on the quality of education. And so I think that that's the opposite of what's going on in the United States.
Isn't it a little bit crazy that we have good models of education, for example, like Finland, but other countries don't seem to want to follow that lead?
Well, I think the United States has an entirely different. I think it's driven, not approach, but I mean, I'd say philosophy or even history, in that many nations view themselves as somewhat of a homogeneous populace.
Okay.
So, let's say, Czech Republic or Slovakia, they view themselves as somewhat of a people. And so, in many countries, they kind of view themselves as that. Even diverse countries such as France, there's still a notion of being French. But with America, because of its, the what? The Hot Wheels, the cars. I thought they were already out there. Go play. Because of the particular history of the United States, which has involved the use of exploited people, whether they're Asian Americans building California railroads, whether they're the use of African slaves and slave labor, or the use of immigrant populations like Latin Americans coming in and picking tomatoes and doing things like that. There's always been like okay, you have to play with something else then until I think then I can get them. Okay, play with those trains then.
I've heard them doing something over there, but quiet now.
We expect to be interrupted by one of three kids at any point.
So basically, because of the particular history of the United States, there's always been a desire for exclusion within the nation. So the nation has people who are not deemed as being entitled to enjoy the full benefits of the nation, which is different from many places that look of themselves as a people. So the history of the United States has always been trying to find creative ways to divide Americans within the United States itself. So that plays itself out through education. That partly explains why, one school, my school, would, cost $40,000, and then the public schools are free. And who goes to those places? Things. So that informs a lot of the policies, a lot of the penalties, a lot of the incentives, a lot of the policy in the United States, not just in education, but in every aspect of life there, to offer vastly different experiences among different target subsets of groups. That
Yeah,
that affects education.
yeah. I was reading something about the American education system. Is it true there wasn't really a main education department until the Reagan era, and that education was
No,
relatively
that was the
independent?
Department of Education from before then.
Before that,
Yeah,
okay, okay.
yeah,
Shows how much I don't know,
yeah.
right?
That was the Department of Education for
There,
a long
there we go. Super. You talked earlier about connection being really important between parents and children. What do you think are the best ways for parents to connect with their children?
time. Basically, I think it's just time. I
Okay.
mean, I think time is the biggest thing. But at the same time, after that, I think it takes a certain level of emotional development of the parents themselves, because a lot of people have children for very different reasons at very different times of their life, and have vastly different expectations from their children, and also have vastly different expectations about what being a parent is. So, for example, a lot of times you have people who have children because they want the children to fill an emotional void. They want somebody to love them, and they want somebody to love them
Yeah.
unconditionally. And so that informs kind of the relationship. And often then, while you may have a strong relationship, it can sometimes be what I would view as a more parasitic or codependent relationship, where the focus is as much on the parent getting something from the child as the parent giving something to the child in that direction. And so, in a sense, I don't think that that paradigm is so particularly healthy. So, obviously, the best way to form a relationship is through quality time together. But depending on the parent's own station in life and maturity level and things like that, I think there's much more than that will qualitatively assess how healthy that relationship is for the child.
Yeah, there's obviously a difference between spending time with your kids and spending quality time
Yeah,
with your
yeah,
kids.
yeah. I mean, obviously somebody who's an alcoholic has an alcoholic problem. They can spend a lot of time with the kid. It may not be the best thing for the kid.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So how do you approach the idea of teaching kids respect or teaching kids to listen, or do we even need to teach kids to do that?
I think that we need to teach kids to listen. I also think we need to teach kids respect. I think that kids emerge from a very biologically determined place of egocentricity as babies, worrying about themselves, and they grow into more caring, nurturing people if they're lucky. And so parents, I think, are part of that process of looking outwards. I think that when you're from our historical development, the baby was just trying to stay alive. And so it's like me, give me something to eat. Maybe eat a rock, maybe eat, whatever I can get. I'm going to put in my mouth because I want to stay alive. Okay, we understand that. I think we're as on our evolutionary journey, we're at a different place where, we have to temper those understandable egocentricity drives in order to foster more respect, cooperation, appreciation for example, animals, appreciation for other people, ideas about ownership, things like that. And so I think it's very important. How do we do that? I think it's just also spending time playing with children. I think that when we talk about socialization, that's really what it should mean, is, playing with children, learning how to share, learning how to listen to rules when playing games. Also, as I said, we had a dog, and learning how to take care of the dog and love an animal, love something other than even human beings is important. Obviously, listening is something that is a challenge, but it's a challenge also for adults. So a
That's
lot of
true.
adults don't listen very well. So it's the constant process of, for me, when I talk to my kids and I say something, asking them to reflect and repeat what I've told them, so that they can really see if they have listened and show me that they have listened. But it's something that is a very ongoing process. It's not going to happen overnight, but I think it's just a process of developing, an education for children.
I would like to ask about discipline because parenting that's based on connection doesn't necessarily require a lot of it, I think. So, do you find yourself in situations where you feel like you should discipline your kids somehow, or
Sometimes I
how do
do,
you
and
do it?
yeah, when I do, mostly we do, like, I tell them to, okay, if they do something and I really want them, I really am annoyed, they do push-ups. They do push-ups. Push-ups
Okay.
That's interesting. Someone else here.
Does that, yeah. It's usually, you usually do it to make him refocus when he's too much, when he's too, when your
Yeah,
son is
I
too
think
crazy.
push-ups
He
are
does push-ups, yeah.
a good thing. So, yeah.
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 I don't know
That's
why,
cool.
but it seems to it seems to get him to it seems to get our son to focus and channel into control some kind of energy that he's got
Yeah,
inside of him.
he's a
Well,
kinetic.
I think that, I think that the idea is, you have the carrot and the stick approach. And so I think sometimes that, the stick, it does sharpen them, say, I don't want to do it. And they just focus more. They just concentrate more. Say, it's not even that, it's like difficult for them to do, but they just know that it's a punishment. And the fact that it's a punishment means it gives them the incentive. I don't want a punishment. I want you to say, great job. So they don't want the punishment, and then they just focus. So it's less about what the punishment is than the fact that they don't want any kind of negative
Yeah.
repercussion in the form of a punishment. Okay, do 10 sit-ups. They don't want to do it because they don't want to have like failed. And so then if they don't want to fail, then they focus more, and then they generally, get better results.
You don't worry that it's going to create some kind of negative connection with physical activity, like
No,
positive
because
thing as a
I tell them to do
punishment.
push-ups when we exercise too. So, I exercise very, very much.
Oh, okay.
We do push-ups together anyway. So
Okay.
it's not like that's the only part where they do them, and they know that I do much more physical activity than that. So they see that I like bust my butt, and so the little bit of push-ups that they do, they know it's like nothing really
Okay.
negative.
Yeah, for some reason my son actually likes to do them. So
Yeah, well, mine does too, but just depending on the situation. He doesn't want to do it when I tell him to do it, like as a punishment. Then it's like, it's just that the stigma of, okay, it's a punishment, but he can do them, and it's just the same.
Yeah.
If I tell him to do, like, and we have these rings, gymnastics rings, I tell him to do 5 pull-ups. It's a lot harder than that, and but I'm not doing that in a punishment situation, and he'll do them. But which does he struggle much more with? He struggles much more with 5 pull-ups than 10 push-ups.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our son can do one now.
Which is still better than me.
Yeah, but my daughter can't do any stuff. She just hangs there and jumps down.
That's okay. Hanging is healthy. There you
That's
go.
what I say. That's exactly what I say. Keep hanging, baby. Keep hanging. Hang as long as you can, and then she drops off. Good job, you hung.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. What's your perspective on parents needing to, as they're being a parent, take care of themselves and look after themselves? Because a lot of parents can put a lot of energy into things, maybe not do it in the right way, maybe they can burn out. So how do you look after yourself as a parent?
Well, I think that, I mean, I told you that, I'm let's say a lone caregiver, or a lone primary caregiver, I would describe it as. And so there was a point when they were, not even that long ago, because my daughter is now only 5, but when they needed a lot of attention, and I wasn't able to do that much, like, for myself. But in the past, maybe like 7 months or so, my daughter is at the age where she can be given much more time by herself, or at least playing with my son. And it was really at quite the beginning of this summer, like maybe in April or May, that I said, okay, well, now I can, like, actually do more stuff for myself. And so that allowed me then to, like, go back into, like, this big gym. I've been very athletic for all my life, and it allowed me to go back and try to get back in shape. And then kind of getting back in shape triggered this, like, okay, like, I'm a fitness junkie again. So like, I take care of myself by going to the gym and doing physical activity, like, every day, and sometimes twice a day. And they come with me to the gym, for example, and then they have books that they read, or they color things and draw things while I'm working out. And at the gym, it's a kind of very large gym where they have like a little separate space for you where you can relax and drink coffee and things like that with large tables. They just sit there and then talk and read and write and draw while I do my exercise. So I'm kind of within, they're within my visible sight line, and they're having fun. I'm not, like a helicopter over them. I'm sweating, doing my thing, and it's a great activity for us. And then I've been able to enjoy over the past, let's say, few months. And then in the summer, I was doing much more stuff outside when the weather was nice. And so, as a result, I'm in maybe better shape now than I've been in past like 7, 8 years.
Oh, that's great.
Physical activity is, my big, what do I do for myself answer.
That's great. It's also what a great idea to maybe have like a family area in gyms or a kids area, while the parents are like training.
Yeah, it's not even a kids area. It's just like an area where people just hang out, like they just get tired and hang out. But it just works out enough, and it's big enough, and it's a brand new gym that they don't even have that many members. So it's just like it's not crowded at all. The gym just opened up like a month and a half ago, and so they're go there and there's like nobody there. So you have this huge gym and then this huge area where you can hang out, and there's just nobody there. So they sit there and they're not bothering anybody. Nobody else is pretty much sitting there. And so it just works out to be the perfect thing. I don't know if it was designed for kids at all, but it just works out that it's perfect for my needs.
Do they try to join you? Because I do something similar with my kids, and my almost 3-year-old always tries to join in.
Well, that's the difference between like for me. That's the difference between like where I was before and now. So at 3 years old, my daughter would have had no boundaries and just run around. But at 5 years old, she can actually knows that that's not really what I want. I want her to sit there, and so that's the difference. The difference is that now I don't have to worry about her just running and jumping on me, and so it gives me a little more opportunity than I had even when she was 4. So for me, that's the difference of why now versus a year ago.
That's cool.
What are the greatest lessons that you've learned from the parenting experience? Because I think that we all are challenged. We all reach hopefully new levels of understanding about life and about human development when we have children. So how did having children change your perspectives, and is there any advice you could offer other parents?
Well, I think that I think any person will tell you that parenting changes their perspective. I think that the difference is how their perspective changes. So obviously, for me, like everybody, my perspective changed a lot. But how it changed, I think, is that I just realized, I guess, the kind of, just how big of a job it is if you really want to do it right. I think that just how big of a commitment and investment that you might want to make.
Okay, she got to change the nappy.
Yeah. Just how big of a commitment it might need to make if you want to do it, right. And it's a big job, and I don't think that everybody is quite ready to do it at a way in which they might dream of doing or hope they're doing. I think it's a little harder than people expect, people realize.
Yeah, again, it's we all realize it's something that a lot of us are not prepared for, a lot of us are not trained for, a lot of us are not ready for. It's a bit like the sort of swimming analogy where you can read a book about swimming, but getting in the water and actually doing the activity is a little bit different. How does it, as a parent, I'm always trying to self-analyze. Am I doing the right thing? Is it working? So what advice do you have for parents in knowing if what they're doing is actually working or successful?
Well, I think that, it's a process of being, making self-assessments and assessing things every day. I don't think I think it's a constant evaluation. Every day you have to evaluate. What works today is not the same as what's going to work tomorrow. And by definition, if it worked today, you need to maybe change it up. You need to offer a little variation tomorrow. So it's a constant process of self-evaluation, evaluating your kids and what their needs are, and just the word constant just keeps popping in my head, because that's what it really is constant evaluation, constant assessment, and the exact opposite of complacency. It's just never thinking that it's just everything is okay. I mean, everything may be fine today, but then tomorrow it's a new challenge to make it work tomorrow also. So it's just the notion of being ready for constantly challenging yourself, constantly challenging your kids, not in terms of creating challenges for them, but trying to create an environment where they can kind of grow and develop on a daily basis.
Yeah, so it's habits of consistency, basically.
Well, I'm not sure, because I think the consistent thing is trying to be a little bit inconsistent. I think that I think consistency is actually damning. I think it's
Okay.
I think, I mean, there's no easy answer, because on a certain level kids crave and need consistency on a certain level, but they also need variation.
Okay.
So you need to, obviously, about like essential kind of life-sustaining elements, you need to be consistent. You need to sleep a certain amount every day. You obviously need to eat. You need to try to, those things need to be consistent. But I'm talking about on the next order, as you get to the upper order of human existence, then you need some variation. You need something, something constantly, just like, for example, I was just giving you the example of exercising, right? You can be fat and start working out, and then you're going to see like great gains, results, doing anything. I was watching some video about some guy who was like 800 pounds, and he was like a internet troll, and then somehow he got arguing with some people, weightlifters, and started talking about himself and hating himself. And they said, dude, if you're just that fat, you just need to like flap your arms and you'll start losing weight. Just flap your arms and you'll start losing weight. And then he did, and then he became like, in shape. So it's a story of how you go from 700 pounds to back to, being a normal human being. And so it's like, if you just start doing something, anything, you'll see gains. But there's a certain point when like you're, let's say, in shape, where if you do the same thing, you're not really going to see much results. You need to change it a bit. So if you're like a marathon runner, then the 10th mile and the 20th mile and 26th mile is not going to be that much different. You start lifting weights, you're going to see some changes. But the 21st to the 22nd mile is nothing. But for everybody else, running a mile is like hard. But these guys run the 22nd mile faster than you can run, period. But if they lift weights, maybe they're going to be like, whoa, wow, my muscles are really reacting. And so I think that it's that kind of thing. You do something consistently, it's going to have less value added. So you need to try to change things up to develop, other aspects of the child's existence and experience.
Yeah, and as we grow, we need to have new experiences as well.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's a balance of like consistency versus change. So it's not that consistency is bad, but I think that people often maybe over rely on it. So if you create something consistent, they just kind of rely on it, and then it then offers less and less for the person involved in that process as they become more and more comfortable. People need to be taken out of their comfort zone as well, especially children too.
Yeah, if you do the same things today that you did yesterday, you will have the same day, basically.
Yeah, and it's, for example, why traveling is so life altering for children and adults, because they're taken out of their environment, taken out of their comfort zone, and they're all, this new stimulus is like just invigorating and engaging, listening to new languages, seeing new architecture, eating new kinds of foods, seeing streets that you've never seen before. All of these experiences, like people go like, wow, and that's the opposite. Traveling is the opposite of consistency.
So have your children traveled a little bit around?
Yeah, they travel a lot. Like my children have been to. My son has been to 13 countries. My daughter 11. And
Wow.
we're in a week, less than a week, we're going to Egypt. And a month ago, we were just in Turkey.
Wow.
So literally on the 21st, we'll be in Egypt. The 21st in 5 days.
Wow.
That sounds warm.
Yeah, yeah. Just last month, 4 weeks ago, we were in Turkey.
Yeah,
So we'll be.
there's so much involved in travel as well. There's
Yeah.
the preparation, the planning, the the packing. There's
Yeah, the packing takes place like the night before, the day before the pack.
I don't pack anything when I go anywhere. I'm just like the bag, off we go.
Yeah, I spend more time worrying about my kids and not forgetting, their underwear or their socks than anything else. Because it's like, okay, this dress, these pants, this shirt, oh, I forgot the underwear. Oh, I forgot the socks. Where am I going to find socks? Why do I want to buy socks? I don't want to buy socks on vacation. Baby socks.
That's when you need your kids running around after you going, Dad, have you got this? Did you get
No,
that?
now we've tried, as I say, we've traveled enough now that it's like, I don't forget those things. I actually like pack them first. Wear the socks, underwear first, and then everything else.
That's it. Essentials first.
That's things that are like I might forget first.
As long as you got clean underwear, it's okay.
Well, you can go wearing many days wearing one pair of jeans. You don't want to go many days with one pair of underwear.
Oh my God, that's so true. That's so true. Wow, we would we would like to thank you very much for giving us this time today and sharing your experiences and
Well,
your.
thank you for asking. It's nice to share ideas about parenting. It's a very unique project that you guys are doing. I don't know who's gonna watch our interview, but it's still enjoyable just to talk.
Well, we don't know either.
Yeah. But I'm saying, it's just a nice chance to talk about parenting, period, regardless of who and how many people.
And we find it very enriching to meet other perspectives and just encounter new ideas.
I find that this opportunity to focus on parenting is very important for me because in my relationships with other people, of course, I have friends and I have colleagues that I communicate a lot with, but we don't nail it down on parenting in our communication. We talk about very, very general things. And I think it's nice to go a little bit deeper into these topics. It's nice.
Well, I think that I just want to say one thing. I think in this internet age, like I watched an incredibly great video about a guy who is one of the founders of Facebook, but he left, and he was saying that Facebook is destroying society. Like it's destroying society because people aren't engaging with others the way that we used to. And so for me, like just having the chance to talk for an hour or so and is the kind of engagement that maybe we would have had much more before Facebook. Maybe not with you exactly, maybe with somebody outside in this area. But the idea of talking about things deeply, of face to face, even though it's through a screen, communication is different from the writing experience. The writing experience where somebody is like, fuck you, excuse my French, but that's what often happens is like reading and engaging through the writing process is different than like talking. Like, for example, just even then, if I said like, fuck you, I apologize a little bit. Whereas I probably wouldn't apologize if I wrote it in a post. You'd just be like, if you don't like it, don't read the post. But there's a different relationship when we're talking. And so I think that relationship is nice to even if nobody watched it. The mere act of getting together and talking is really quite nice. What do you guys?
Yeah, I think that the.
Can you get what?
I think that's a pretty relevant point.
We're going to save the cashews for tomorrow. I'm going to make you something to eat soon. Make some cereal and a couple minutes. Okay?
It's just not the same when.
Give me like 2 minutes and then I'll be there for you guys.
When people are writing. Yeah, my experience of the writing is you look at people's posts and they're not communicating with each other. That they're writing to themselves basically a lot of the time.
Or they're writing to somebody else who just wants to give them a like. They're writing for somebody who wants to give them affirmation. So they're
Yeah.
talking to the person, but they realize that there's this group of other people who will then join in and say, yeah, you're smart. Yeah, you're cool. Yes, I'm with you. So it's definitely not talking to one another, but it's talking to others, but in the moments of like, affirm me. I'm representing you in this post. So like my post, say that I'm right. I'm right. This guy is wrong. But it's definitely not just talking to one another.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and that
think we
doesn't.
should. I think we should go for the thing that is harder, and it's generally harder to say something face to face than to write it down. And I also, I even find that in languages, you said that you speak a lot of different languages. I find some things harder to say in my own, in my mother tongue, in my language, than I find it to say it in English because there's more of me. It's like more honesty,
Uh,
saying it in my language.
okay.
So
But why
I
is that
think.
harder for you? For me, it's easier for that very same reason. For me, it's
No, no, no. I'm
easier.
talking about personal communication when you're trying to
Okay.
communicate something really personal. Like you're
Okay.
going to say somebody I love you. It's easier to do that in English,
For me,
than.
it's the opposite. For me, it's English to do in English too. But because it's my mother language, if I say I love you in another language, it's more like it's not me. Like I wouldn't say.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, that's basically what I'm talking about from a different point of view, right? It's more
Uh-huh.
personal if you say it in your language for me.
No, I
So
definitely think it's more
it's like
personal.
that with typing and speaking face to face as well. It's just
Yeah,
easier
yeah,
to type. So
yeah. Well,
yeah.
yeah, but for me, I don't know because I think it's for me. I think it's just, I don't know if it's easier or harder, but I think it's just I think for me this kind of communication for me is actually easier. It's nice actually just going to the basic thing of just looking at somebody and talking in real time what you're thinking, kind of unfiltered, no keyboard, no typing, no punctuation, just talking. So for me, it's much more rewarding and even easier, even on a difficult subject like parenting, because so rarely do I feel that we get the chance to actually express ourselves, like
Okay,
by having real conversations and just talking, like
that's
expressing
great.
ourselves.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Much.
there's for me, I always feel that there's a lot happening. The parenting is sort of what happens with people at home behind closed doors. No one really sees what
Yeah,
goes
no,
goes
definitely, definitely.
goes on, and I'm always trying to pick up pieces of advice. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always trying to see things from a different perspective. It's for example, what you just said about Facebook. I know over the next week I'm going to be thinking about that. That principle of likes, which annoys and frustrates me because in a normal conversation, you wouldn't ever. I don't think you would go around looking for likes
Hmm.
in a normal conversation. You would
But
just
that's what
do.
this founder of Facebook was saying.
Yeah.
It provides a dopamine rush. So it triggers. It's like this effect that it has that we're looking for it. So we may not even be realizing that we are looking for the likes ourselves. And when we get it, we're like rewarded. Like, oh, you got a zinger, or you're smart, or yes. So that process of this kind of dopamine rush is what he's saying is going to like destroying ourselves and destroying society, that he, in a sense, he says he regrets being a part of. Like he regrets being a part of. He calls it shit. He says, I don't go on that shit. In the past 10 years, I maybe made like, 5 posts, and I don't let my kids go on that shit.
Yeah.
And this is the founder of it. He's like a billionaire.
Yeah, and it annoys me when things become a numbers game. When it's like, okay, I'm on here to see if I've got 17 and they've got 25 and somebody else has got 64. It's like that's
Yeah.
that's not the point. The point
Yeah,
is.
well, anyway, even on the other side, but even that conversation, I actually did just post it. Like I watched it like last night, and I posted it this morning. So it's worth listening to get ideas about this, because this guy is pretty. He talks about more than this, and he talks for an hour, and it's worth listening to. But just on that part of like the psychological aspects of Facebook, it's kind of like a little trippy. But he talks about a lot of other things as well. But going back to the point is that I really do appreciate the interaction that we have, and there is like another person in my area who has like spotted me and my parenting style, and we often get together for dinner, and we maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, and they have a daughter who their parents have placed her in like a very expensive school in Kharkov. You know, by Kharkov standards, like a couple $100 a month, but by Kharkov standards, it's a lot. And we get together and talk, and we talk about parenting and parenting styles. So it's nice that I even have somebody in this little, you know, real world circle that we talk about these things with. But it's nice talking about them with you, and we're talking in English, and there we talk in Russian.
Okay, super. Well, that's it's always nice to, we need those connections. Those connections help us breathe,
Yeah.
help us grow. They reaffirm the positive things that we do as
And so
well.
for me, like having watched that video and everything, that's what I'm saying. Like even if nobody watches it, it's nice that we had the conversation. Like it's nice that we just for it itself, like it itself is the process of just talking, because we've lost that.
Okay, super cool. So stay on the line for a second. Stay on the line. We're going to do a
Okay.
little bit of our conclusion now, which is to
Okay.
say, of course, everyone says thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I don't know if there's I don't know if you've got a website or anywhere where people can get in touch with you if they want to ask you anything, or
Just Facebook page, of course.
just Facebook page. Okay, that's cool. If people are interested in what we do, it's the Academy of Language Therapy and Life Coaching. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. The website is nsa-slovakia.com.
And mine is 21centurymom.com.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
and read her blog posts, because especially if you're a guy out there, read her blog posts, because it really gives me a different perspective on the things that are happening here that I don't see.
Things that are happening here that you don't
that,
see.
that I don't see as well. It's really nice to get that perspective. So thanks very much for the time. Thanks very much to anyone who's watching. And we'll catch up with you at some point soon. If you've got any questions, leave them for us online and we'll try to deal with them. We'll try to give you advice. And wherever you are, we wish you a fantastic day. So, Stephen, wave bye-bye to everybody online.
Thank you very much.